I'm doing really well, and thank you so much for reaching out and including me on your podcast. Much appreciated. Yeah, sure. I am a totally blind person, and I was started out life as a sighted baby. And when I was 5 years old, both of my retinas detached when I was in kindergarten, and I became totally blind in a very short period of time. And At that point in time, kids with disabilities were not educated in the local public school with their siblings and neighbors. You were sent to a special school. My parents were told by the local school that I needed to go to the state school for the blind. We lived north of Seattle. They visited the Washington State School, weren't very impressed with what they saw. They were in their mid 20s, and they both started their teaching careers. But My retinal specialist was in Oregon. Someone suggested they visit the Oregon school. They did. They loved it. They quit their jobs, moved the family down so I could go to school there first, second, third grade and get my blindness skills. Learn how to read and write Braille and use a cane and type on a typewriter. And then I went all the way through school, high school, grew up in small towns, got good grades, participated in athletics, all the things. I got a academic scholarship to Whitman College in Walla Walla, and did well there, Phi Beta Kappa cum laude, and then graduated and decided I wanted to go to work and earn a paycheck and get married and buy a house and have kids and all the things. And I experienced what so many people with disabilities, blind people experience. People with significant disabilities, only 35% of us are working. And I met all those barriers where I would have a phone interview and go in for the in-person interview, and the person interviewing me would become very confused about how does this blind kid think he can be a financial analyst? How would he possibly do this job? So um, I cast my net wider and wider. I ended up getting an offer to work for a securities firm and sell tax-free municipal bonds on straight commission. I did that for 10 years and earned enough money to do the things I talked about. Got married, bought a house, had our two kids, and when I turned 30, I just really got clear I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. So I did some reflection, used the What Color Is Your Parachute book, and just got really clear that I wanted to be in the nonprofit sector. I wanted to be in leadership, and wanted to work on behalf of creating opportunities for people who are blind, smoothing the path for blind people coming up after me. And through a series of events, I landed at the Lighthouse for the Blind here in Seattle. Started as the development director, the fundraising person. Eventually became the CEO. And it's a nonprofit that employs blind and deafblind people in businesses, the most unique of which is aerospace manufacturing, making parts for all the Boeing aircraft. And had about 250 blind and deafblind employees, um, all making livable wage, great benefits, good jobs. So very proud of that. And then I was asked to join the board of the American Foundation for the Blind, AFB, which was Helen Keller's organization. And I did that, and after a couple of years as a board member, the CEO had announced that he was going to retire, and the AFB was going to do a search for the next CEO. In the meantime, I'd started a PhD program in leadership and change because I wanted to be the most impactful leader I could be, and talked with my wife about the fact that I only have one career, and AFB is such a historic, iconic organization. There's only one AFB. There aren't that many high-level national leadership jobs in the blindness field, and that's one of them. So I applied and was offered that opportunity. And so in 2016, we moved to New York City, where AFB was headquartered in Manhattan. Went through I'm in Seattle. Yeah. So we went through a strategic planning process, closed the big New York downtown offices before COVID, opened a small headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, to be close to the political action in Washington, D.C. Took most of the organization virtual, moved to D.C., was at AFB for 6 years. It was a financial turnaround situation, so lots of hard decisions had to be made, moving programs to other homes, eliminating positions, cutting costs while trying to grow revenues. So I am very proud of what was accomplished there. AFB, I left them on a growth track. Moved back home to Seattle, partly prompted by the pandemic. My father was dying. Our son and his wife were about to have their first child. So I just really needed to be home. So I came here and I continued to operate AFB for a while remotely from Seattle. And then I guess January of 2022, got clarity with the board of AFB that it was time for a change in leadership, and so I exited there at the end of June 2022, and now I'm consulting and I'm working with organizations both for-profit and non-profit to accelerate inclusion of people with disabilities in the workforce. My main focus has been on people who are blind. I'm expanding that scope to include people with other disabilities, and looking for employers who have done some good work in diversity, equity, and inclusion around race and gender, perhaps, growing, needing to find talent, wanting to compete in the marketplace for talent, and having those conversations about let's put some structures in place so you can bring in qualified applicants with disabilities for your open jobs. And part of that conversation is the lived experience of blindness or another significant disability allows people to develop unique strengths in certain areas. And if you read a book like The Talent Code, it talks about neurologically how people gain skills by challenging themselves, overcoming challenges, solving problems that are increasingly complex, and living with a disability in this world that is not built to accommodate us gives you opportunities to develop resilience and grit and patience and creative problem solving and the ability to work in teams and strong communication skills. And those are the exact traits that employers say they need. So my job can be very simple. If I find an organization whose leadership wants to be inclusive, would like to expand their thinking around inclusion to encompass people with disabilities, then I can show them how to do that. And it's really just linking the structures together, the vocational rehabilitation system, other companies who've already done it or are doing it, the community-based nonprofits in the space, and then the people with disabilities in the community, and just linking them all together. And everyone shares the common goal of having better employment outcomes. No one's succeeding to the level they want. It's all pretty siloed, pretty separate. So I just, I'm an ethnographic researcher. I have a PhD in leadership and change. And I just do qualitative research. I interview their leaders, some other people from the community. What's that? Yeah, ethnographic, yeah. So that's about exploring a community, like ethnicity, same common root. So I spend maybe 45, 60 days interviewing people. I synthesize the data, and then I come back and make recommendations to the leadership of the company or the organization and say, here's what I heard. This is what you say you want to do. Here's the opportunities you have. Here are some of the barriers. Here are things I can recommend that you do in the next 6 to 9 months that'll help move you toward disability inclusion. And then we talk about, some of these things I can really help you with. I can speed up your process because I know all the people. I know the Department of Labor. I know the Department of Education. I know the vocational rehabilitation system. I know companies that are farther down the road than you. I know the systems of community-based nonprofits that focus on disability employment, so I can shorten your learning curve and speed up your process. Let me reach out to these folks. Let me set up the meetings. Let me facilitate the conversations, and then usually do a 6 to 9 month engagement and get people on the right track and having great fun, great success in the area of cybersecurity. There's such a huge demand for entry-level cybersecurity people. I've partnered with a cybersecurity company called Nova Coast. We've developed the Apex program. It's www.theapexprogram.com. And it's a virtual training program designed specifically to prepare people who are blind to sit for Network Plus and Security Plus certifications. So the entry level in cyber. And then Nova Coast, super entrepreneurial company. They also have a staffing business, so they can place people into cybersecurity jobs. So it's a beautiful thing. We've gotten set up with vocational rehabilitation in 10 states now, 6 more in process. But such a great field of opportunity, projected significant growth in the cybersecurity industry. The White House came out with a national workforce and education strategy on cyber at the end of July last summer, and they cited 755,000 open cybersecurity jobs in the United States. So where you've got this rapidly growing industry with a huge demand pull, and then you've got significant numbers of blind people who want to work and haven't been able to get their foot on the ladder. And then you have these structures, the vocational rehabilitation agencies in each state that are funded by the Department of Education. And you have nonprofits, and any community of any size, there are nonprofits serving people with disabilities. So it's just a beautiful thing, and it's going very well. I just talked a lot. Oh, sure. Well, it's a nice story. We both went to Whitman College in Walla Walla, and they had about 330 entering students, freshmen, and you were asked to send in your senior picture and a little paragraph about yourself. And then they put it in a booklet and sent it out to everybody, so you could get a sense of who you were going to be starting college with. And my father and brother were looking through the book and giving me a little visual information, in particular about the young ladies in the book. And my dad said, Rosalind Jackson, West Seattle High, best looking girl in here. And closed the book. And first week in school, I met her in the dorm. She was just a super smart, brilliant, charming person. And we had some classes together and studied together some and got to know each other. And yeah, we've been married 38 years now. And we have 2 grown adult children who are great citizens. And we have our first grandchild who will be coming over in about 45 minutes to play with Grandma and Grandpa. He'll be 2 in March. They're having their second baby in March. So we're very, very happy to be grandparents. It's the best. I don't, and I don't think I will. I I really enjoy my time flexibility after being the CEO of a couple pretty large nonprofits. When I looked at my calendar, January of 2022, and I saw that about 85% of my time was spent on things that were important but didn't lead directly to outcomes. So, working with the board of trustees, subcommittees, budgeting, performance reviews, HR issues, all that stuff which needs to be done. But my time was really not my own very much of the time. So now when I'm consulting, I just look for kind of fun, high impact, innovative things to do with cool, innovative people who are up for taking some risks and trying some things and working with privately held companies is such a beautiful thing because they can make quick decisions. Nonprofit, love the nonprofit sector, love volunteers who serve on boards, but it's hard to be nimble. You have to go through the committee, and the subcommittee has to recommend it to the board, and then you have to wait for the next board meeting, and then it has to get put into the annual budget. So it's a slow, the processes are somewhat slow. I think also in very large corporations you could say the same thing. But I've really found kind of this beautiful space in these 50 to $100 million privately held companies that are growing fast and trying to keep up with the rapidly changing world, and kind of get it that they can, I say, supercharge their bottom line business results through disability inclusion. Uh-huh. Well, when I ran the Lighthouse for the Blind, it was primarily a manufacturing company. About when I took over, it was 27 million in sales, and when I left, it was 95 million. But we had, like I say, CNC machinists, blind and deafblind people using computer numerically controlled machining equipment to make parts for all the Boeing airplane, and we got qualified for Northrop Grumman and Boeing Defense. Made a lot of stuff for the military. So we had machinists, assembly people, but then an organization of that size, we wanted blind people throughout the organization. So I was the CEO, so at the top of the org chart. But then we had blind and deafblind people in HR and marketing, in fundraising and sales, in providing employee services like orientational and mobility training, braille training, computer technology training to our employees so they could be more efficient and effective employees. Managers, supervisors. In cyber, where I'm starting now with the Apex program, it's very much in its infancy. We've had our first 2 students go through, get certified, and get hired as cybersecurity analysts, entry level, and we have 16 students in process right now. I think just doing a little math, knowing how many blind people in each state have open cases with vocational rehabilitation, and making an assumption about the small percentage of people this would be a good fit for. I think when we're up and running and mature, we can get 400-ish blind people a year into cybersecurity careers in entry level. And once you're in the industry, then there are so many different career paths you can take. Certifications are king. It doesn't really matter if you have a college degree or not. But many employers will pay for people to get additional training to add certifications. You can go in so many different directions, and many of the jobs are remote, which is a beautiful thing because transportation is so often a barrier for people who are blind in employment. It's a ever evolving industry that's innovative, and anyway, I'm super excited about it. I think if I can set up a structure that will continue after I want to go fishing. If we get 400 blind people a year into cyber for 8, 10, 12, 15 years, then we're really going to change the landscape in that industry, and I think really influence IT in general. So it's a transformational change project that helps individuals, helps companies, and I think can change the culture of the cyber industry. Oh, of course. Yes, yes. No. He's developing, yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Big pronouncements. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. If I could install a piece of hardware into my brain and be able to see, I would do it instantly. It would make life much easier. Um, as a blind person living in a world that was not built um, for blind people, it's very challenging and can be frustrating. I'm very, I'm not ashamed of being blind. I'm not, you know, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. It's just part of my character. It's part of my, it's a characteristic. Um, it doesn't bother me on a daily basis. But I think I could be moving faster, stronger, better if I had the characteristic of being able to see. um, I don't know about the Neuralink. I haven't read about it. Like, for instance, my retina's detached when I was 5. I'm 62 now, so my optic nerves have not had any input into them for 57 years, so they're totally atrophied. So, I don't know what the Neuralink is. I don't know what visual conditions it could help with or not. Um, I probably would not see myself getting involved in promoting that. I think there are other organizations, Prevent Blindness America, Foundation Fighting Blindness, Glaucoma Foundation, um, that are structured to be able to deliver those kind of medical interventions. And just imagining, you just brought this up, so I haven't thought about it. I imagine I would continue to work with people who are blind, um, people that a medical intervention would not, change that characteristic. Em- yeah, employment is the main thing, but I will certainly work on anything that I think is fun and cool and will help, accelerate inclusion of people with disabilities. I have a client here in Seattle, the Seattle Theater Group, and they run 3 historic music venues, and they want to have their staff and volunteers and performances reflect the community. So we're in Seattle, King County, probably 15%, 20% of people in this community have a disability of some sort. So they would like um, that reflected in everything they do. So I'm working with them on that. It's interesting you ask. I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker. She's making a documentary about the Kennedy Center. They bring young disabled musicians from around the world together in DC and spend 6-8 weeks workshopping, training, practicing, and they do performances. And she's been hired to do a documentary about it, and she has not really worked in the disability space, so she's wanting to hire behind the camera. She wants sound engineers who are blind and camera people who are deaf, and so I've been learning a little bit more about that space. I've connected her with some groups and resources. There's some Facebook groups. There's one called Trained Actors with Disabilities. There's recording artists and musicians, people with disabilities as an organization. So I'm not solidly in that space, but I'm learning about it, just as I talk to people who want to be more inclusive of people with disabilities in film and television. Yeah, I'm looking at the Facebook page right. It's called Trained Actors with Real Disabilities. Real disabilities. Yep. Because historically, people, characters in movies and film, disabled characters have been portrayed by people without disabilities. So there's pretty passionate group of people who say, if you're going to portray a person with a disability on film or television, let's use a person who really has a disability. I think it does matter. Um, this is a very stark example, but in the past, people who were African American back in the day were portrayed by white actors with blackface. So um, that's a gut punch when you think about that, and that doesn't really happen anymore. Um, so yeah, I think it's important. Um, there are talented people with disabilities who want to be in that profession and performance, and they should not be, I don't think, um, faced with barriers that don't need to exist. But it's very similar in the blindness field. There are hundreds of nonprofits serving people who are blind, and very, very, very few blind CEOs or executive directors, like a handful. So that's also an issue that I think is persistent and very troublesome, because you would not have a nonprofit specifically dealing with women's issues led by a man, for instance, or um, a Latino serving organization led by someone who wasn't from that culture. So I think disability is kind of the last place where you can really where people really can discriminate and exclude, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of repercussion about that. So I would certainly like to see a lot of these landscapes changed. The goal would be to have outcomes for people with disabilities be the same as the general population. So you know more kids with disabilities drop out of high school, fewer enter college, more don't complete college. As I said, 35% of us are employed, which means 65% aren't. A third of people with significant disabilities live in poverty. Our home ownership is 1/10 out of the general population. Suicide's higher, addiction's higher, um, sexual abuse is higher, all these things. So by any measure of thriving in our society, people with disabilities are having poorer outcomes than the general population. So long term, it won't happen in my lifetime, but I hope I'm helping move things in that direction. But the dream would be, the vision, that the outcomes for people with disabilities same as everyone else. Yeah, yeah. You talked a little bit about your own disability and your kind of career journey. So if you could just kind of re-summarize that for me, I'd appreciate that. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, really? Okay. 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 Hmm. Uh, hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Uh, hmm. Uh-huh. Okay. Huh. Well. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yep. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. That's that's nice. That's nice. So I went to a website called Bookshare just now, and I just downloaded that book onto my Braille note taker, the switched on book. So I've got it now, and I'll read it. If people want to get in touch with me to talk about disability inclusion in the workforce, LinkedIn is a really great place. So it's Kirk Adams. If you put in Kirk Adams Seattle, I pop up right up to the top. But it's Kirk Adams PhD, and then Facebook and Twitter. But LinkedIn's the main thing. I'm Kirk Adams PhD on Twitter. Um, but I've been working on my LinkedIn network for 15 or 16 years. I've got 30,000 connections that all have some interest in disability inclusion, and that's a great way to reach me. My email address is just my first and last name followed by three zeros at Gmail. So Kirk Adams, KIRKADAMS 000 at gmail.com, and I'll talk to anyone at any time about accelerating inclusion of people with disabilities in our society. Great, great. And when you're ready to put this out in the world, let me know, and I'll get it out there on my social media. Terrific. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot.